School district here, and I know there's some principals here too, so, you know, I don't do the job alone. They don't do the job alone. We're you know, working together to try to accomplish some great things. I do want to make a couple of acknowledgments, and then I'm going to ask the folks that are here from our county central office system and our principals to stand for a second and tell people who you are and what you do so that they know who else is here in case there are particular questions or things that maybe it's not in my direct area of expertise, shall we say. But I would like to acknowledge Dr. Dan Kaufman, a current member of the Board of Education, one of my colleagues, and Myrna Teasdale, who I have known for a very long time and made great contributions to our school district and our county. So you're waving at somebody. Oh, hi, Ms. Jacobs. I didn't see you back there. So Gina Jacobs is here as well, but again, I'm sorry I didn't see that far back. The bio, you never know what people are going to say about you, so it's best if you can to have them sort of, get rid of that. And but I do, I've had a couple people even since I've been here tonight ask me a little about me. So, the brief rundown. I've lived here since the summer between second and third grade when my mom moved my brother and sister and I to Prince George's County from Northern Virginia. My father was in the Army, and I was born at DeWitt Army Hospital, Fort Belvoir. And then after their, divorce and things, she moved the family to Prince George's County, worked for the federal government until her retirement. And I went to Kentland Elementary School. I went to Kent Junior High School, graduated from Bladensburg High School, and then started my post-secondary work at the Prince George's County Community College. And when I found trying to go to school full-time and working full-time to be a little more of a challenge than I cared for, I joined the Navy. And I spent 3 years on active duty and 3 years on active reserve duty. And when I got off of active duty, when I got off of active duty with the Navy, actually while I was in the Navy at Bethesda Naval Hospital, I got on a day shift and returned to the community college to do a little more work at night. And then when I got out of the Navy, I started the next week at the University of Maryland College Park, and I got a bachelor's and master's degree from College Park. As I was finishing up my bachelor's degree, I student taught at High Point High School. I got my first teaching job at Crossland High School. I was there for about 6 years and went to Central High School as an assistant principal and became principal of Buck Lodge Middle School in Adelphi, and then home in the Northwestern Wildcats on Adelphi Road, right down the street from the University of Maryland, and was there for 8 years. 4 years I was a principal, 4 years I was in a CEA role there where we ran the high school and supervised the feeder schools and evaluated principals, handled parent questions, and did all kinds of other things. The Times then sent me to I'm playing that very nicely. The Times then sent me to Montgomery County, to Walter Johnson High School, and then from there to a community assistant superintendent position there, and then the last 7 years as superintendent in Anne Arundel County. And now I'm back home where I've lived that whole time. My wife and my youngest daughter, who was still at home when I got the job in Montgomery County, said, we like our life here in Bowie. You took the job in Montgomery County, you can drive to it. And so I did for a total of 6 years, and then 7 more the other way to Annapolis to my job in Anne Arundel County. So I've lived in Bowie since 1978, I believe, and it's about the same time I worked. I bought my second home in Bowie after a couple years, and I've lived here ever since. Second home that I have in Bowie. Figure I'll spend my retirement here as well. So I hope the businesses and the restaurants that Fred was talking about are here for a long time. What the questions or concerns are, even if we even if we don't have time to kind of get into the depth, at least people are here to make some connections and make sure that whatever questions you may have, or song praises that you want to sing, or whatever, we're here for all ends of it this evening. So just I know they have me down here to talk for an hour, and that's not going to happen. I felt like it was a little bit too long to just talk, because in my experience, people probably are at meetings because they have questions they want to have answered, or at least give somebody the opportunity to find an answer for them. But I do want to talk about just a little bit of the kind of coming back and getting reacquainted with the district, and then a couple of the things that are going on in the educational scene. So when I even before I started officially on August 1st, we started holding meet and greets out in the community in different parts of the county, and we had a total of 3 of those, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people came to every one of those. I made an attempt, at least, unless people got fed up and left. I tried to greet everybody that came to those and talk with them a little bit. I thought they were very successful. I had former colleagues come, former parents come, former students of mine in Prince George's County come to those events, both from when I was a teacher and from when I was an assistant principal and principal. And I heard, all kinds of questions about different, programmatic questions, some of it, instructional oriented, some of it school, what kind of programs we have in schools and those kind of things. And I found it to be very informative. I've also, if you haven't heard me talk about trying to get out to all of the schools, I know that's a big task, and I know there are people who doubt the ability to do that, but I think it's really, really important to spend a little bit of time, and it really can only be a little time to get to 204 schools and a few other facilities over the course of one school year. But I've already visited 60 or more schools. I hit 52 by the last day of my work month in September, and I've been to a number more since then. So I'm at least 60. I'm not keeping a daily, count, but I know that it's 60 or better already. So I think I'm in pretty good shape, unless we get a winter different than the one we've had the last couple winters, and hopefully that won't happen. At least I'm guessing most people probably don't want the kind of winter we had a few winters ago. The last couple were okay. But I go on the school visits because I like to see lots of things that are going on in schools. I like to see, the delivery of instruction, the curriculum, the facilities, the class sizes, all of you learn a lot in an hour or so per building, and talking to people, hearing from principals, hearing from teachers, talking to students in some cases where time allows, has been very instructive and very informative, and I'm learning a lot as I, again, travel around the county. I also have been meeting with a lot of different constituencies and talking with, people about things, and we've had people come into the board meeting since I've been here, talking about, particular things of interest to them, and we found that very interesting as well. I would say that, in my past experiences, I have, had a wealth of experience in a whole lot of different areas. But I would say that if you talk to people that have worked with me in the past, 10 years or so, they tell you that I've been very active in the environmental arena, the environmental literacy arena, the environmental graduation requirement is something that I, feel very strongly about, and work very hard with state leaders from the environmental communities, school systems, state leadership on doing that. I co-chaired the subcommittee of the partnership in nature that the governor set up some years back. I co-chaired the environmental literacy plan subcommittee of that work group. I've also spent some time co-chairing the State Fine Arts Council, State Fine Arts Committee, organized under MSDE, and have done some work in arts magnet work, integrated arts, and that kind of area. Some things that interest me. Done some work in the STEM area as well. I think most of you know, science, technology, engineering, math's a big topic these days in education. At least in my last experiences, we included the A for art and called it STEAM, and worked to have kids engaging in the creative side of that work as well, because one without the other is sort of not hitting the whole piece for me. So I think those are a couple of the things that I've done. Certainly done some other things as well, but the environment and the arts and a couple of other areas are things that I've again spent some time working on. I have also done some work in second language learning. I did a dissertation in two-way immersion in English and Spanish, and have worked with the Center for Applied Linguistics, and had when I was principal at Northwestern, we had a Mellon grant. We did some work along the feeder pattern with the middle and high school students, and did a presentation at the CABE Conference, California Association of Bilingual Educators in California. That's been a long time now, though. I was at Northwestern, so I left there 13 years ago, so it was sometime just before that. So I think that's kind of let me talk about family for a minute. I have 4 children and a wife. My wife just retired. Some of you read about her in the newspaper. She just retired after 36 years of teaching in Prince George's County. The last 15 of them were at Bowie High School, and she's actually at Bowie High School tonight. There's I think a senior, some sort of meeting with seniors, and she's working with the senior class this year, even though she retired. She was working with them as they were coming up. She felt committed to that work. So I have 4 children. My son lives in Northern Virginia and is married and working and not asking for money anymore and those kind of things. That's all good. My 3 girls are all in education. My twins from my first marriage, one of them teaches in an ED regional program in Anne Arundel County, and the other one's an assistant principal in Baltimore County at a middle school. And my youngest from my second marriage, Hannah, is a teacher in Anne Arundel County. She started teaching 5th grade in a Title I school in Annapolis, and now teaches at Annapolis Middle School. And so all 3 of my girls, followed along the right career path, and are doing great things for children in their own right. So I didn't want to leave that part of it out, because that's an important part as well. My son and my youngest daughter, Hannah, both went through Bowie schools and graduated from Bowie High School. And so with that, I'm done. I'll take the easy questions, and I have people here to take the hard questions.
Can I ask that if you have questions, that you line up against the far right side of the wall?
Yikes.
I also want to acknowledge.
Well, I think for those of you that don't know, and I think probably everybody does, the Common Core has been being worked on in the state of Maryland for several years now. The state curriculum writing has been done, and all the locals in the state are pretty much finished, except for some small adjustments. I don't think I have anybody here from curriculum and instruction, but we're in the process of doing professional development for teachers on the new the curriculum changes that are there. So we're ready. I mean, it's not it's really been done.
Will it make a difference?
Well, I think it'll make a difference, and I think that the whole point of Common Core, just a brief history lesson, if that's acceptable. When No Child Left Behind, became the revised Elementary and Secondary Education Act, it did some good things for our country's public education policy, particularly in not allowing schools to sort of hide behind, high-achieving groups and let other groups, lag behind without any acknowledgement that they need, some additional attention and some additional work by school districts and schools. One of the concerns, and there were several, but one of the concerns that people had was that each state under No Child Left Behind were able to set their own standards. And so some states had higher standards than other states. And so Maryland, is pretty well understood, at least in national education circles, to have had fairly high standards. And so there were children in Maryland that were faced with the prospect perhaps of not having the ability to graduate from high school in our state that would have been able to graduate from high schools in a number of other states in the Union. So Common Core, they didn't want to establish a national education curriculum. So what Common Core did was encourage states to join a consortium of states and to write a common set of standards, the Common Core. And so Maryland is in one of those consortiums. It's one of the leaders in that consortium. And the idea is to increase rigor across the curriculum to make our students more competitive internationally. And I, it's just being implemented. We'll see how that works out. Certainly the standards have risen. We could certainly have some people come back to Bowie and other communities and give some examples of what's in the current, sort of curriculum in the assessment arena and what's in the new one going forward. It's much more difficult for students. I think that concurrent with that is that I think that some of the states that have already begun implementing some assessments to go along with the Common Core are seeing a decline in the overall achievement. Not that kids are necessarily learning less, but the standards are higher. And so when you're assessed here and you're, taught at a level concurrent with where you were being taught or even a little higher, there's a mismatch between how students are achieving. And so I think in the short term, I think we're going to see a decline. In the long term, I think we're going to see some much higher standards by students across the country. My take on it.
Good evening, Adrian Rich, and I'm with the Georgetown PTA, but I'm not asking my question in that capacity. And I hope this is a softball, but you have the proverbial 100 days under your belt. And I was curious as to whether or not you could give us a frank assessment of where you found the district when you assumed the reins of leadership and some of your priorities having had that knowledge.
Sure. Well, first, let me say that I just released, and I brought a few copies. They're in black and white, though. It costs a lot to run the color copiers, but you can get them in color at pgcps.org on the World Wide Web. But I've just announced an entry plan that covers a number of goals, and I'm not going to reiterate those goals. And we convened our first meeting yesterday of a transition team, which is also out in the public domain. Who those people are and those kind of things. Again, I'm not going to read the list and those kind of things, but their role is to help with the rest of that assessment piece. It's a really huge district, and to kind of be able to go through it piece by piece by piece, division by division, department by department within each of them would take a lot longer than I think most of us are willing to spend doing that. So we brought experts together and assigned them to subcommittees to take a look at different pieces of our organization and to give me some recommendations on, what if they had their druthers, what we would be doing going forward. In the other work, however, so there's going to be some more coming, hopefully by around the end of December. I hope that group is going to finish working by the end of November, and we'll have hopefully a report along with an executive summary and those kind of things by the end of December, if the dates all hold. But I would say that in my experiences since getting here August 1st, which has been, about 10 weeks now or so, I'd say that I see a lot of really much better things going on than I think the school system, gets credit for. I've been in some classrooms with some really terrific teachers, some schools with some really terrific leadership. I've also, frankly and honestly, been in some rooms where I was a little disappointed in what I was seeing, and I'd say one of the, biggest, concerns that I think, anybody would have is that inconsistency from classroom to classroom and school to school creates an inconsistency in student achievement and results that you get. So one of the things that we're going to, be looking at as a district is that consistency issue and whether or not we're really delivering high quality instruction and, covering the right amount of, the teaching and learning process in each classroom across the country in an equitable way. Facility-wise, I've been in some brand new facilities that look great, and I've been in a whole lot of facilities that need a lot of work. And so having some conversations with the board and with, some of the funding organizations, some of the funding groups, we're going to have some conversations about how we move forward with that issue. Financially, there have been some news reports and things that have talked about, our not some of our best work perhaps in not being able to, efficiently use the resources that have been allocated to us, the return, some news reports not long ago about returning some money that we had used in the allotted amount of time for some work that's badly needed. And I find that, a very big concern, when you have as many needs as our district has, to not be able to use, money that's appropriated to you is inexcusable in my view of things. And so we've had some, really, strong conversations, I think, and had people from the state down to talk with us. And one of the committees is about our resources and our allocations and, those kind of things with the transition committee. And I think that I think we've turned a corner there, and, we've made some personnel decisions, and we have, again, gotten some guidance from the state and others, and I think that we'll see, an improvement in a very rapid, way in that arena. I want to be able to go forward and assure our county and state partners in the funding process that we have the capacity to use the funding that we get both on the operating and the capital sides in a way that, they'll want to continue to give us funding, A, and B, to get us more funding than we currently have. You have to be able to make the argument with your colleagues when there's a set, pot of money at the county and a set pot of money at the state. And you need to be able to make, in my view, a very good and compelling argument for what, your rationale is for having it, and display your ability to do what it is that you say that you're going to do. And then, so the last piece is, I've seen and I've heard a lot of people in both the meet and greets and at board meetings and in my other conversations around the county, who, while on the one hand we hear that, people have been leaving the county, they've been, showing us, they have other options and want to be in those other options. I've actually heard a very different conversation in a lot of places, and that is that people want to be a part of our school district, and they want to be a part of programs that are attractive to them, that provide the right opportunities for their kids. And for some people, those are different opportunities than for others. And so some of the current programs that we have, both Montessori and French immersion, for example, are programs that have waiting lists, that parents are saying, we'd love to be a part of this, but there's no room for us, make a place for us, help us to make the public school system our home in Prince George's County. There are certainly others besides those, but they come. Spanish immersion, we've had people at a number of the board meetings talking to us about wanting a Spanish immersion option for their kids. We have French immersion, and not the largest French speaking population. We have some French speaking population here, but we have 23% of our children who are Spanish speaking in our school district today, and we have no real immersion, partial, dual, full. We have none of those options. So the sort of the third area in terms of the Frank thing is that we need to really take a look at the specialty programs that we offer, both the current ones that we have and the possibility to expand, and the ones that we don't have, and how we might go about the business of providing some additional options for current parents and for parents who are interested in either attending or returning to our school district.
Well, good evening, Dr. Maxwell. My name is Steve Krukar. I have students both at Yorktown Elementary School as well as Samuel Ogle Middle School. And anyway, I have two quick questions, both related to Common Core. First question related to Common Core is this: what was the thinking behind moving to Common Core in terms of replacing the old system or the previous system with Common Core? How was it considered to be maybe superior to the old system? And then number two, does Common Core allow for, let's say, local input? Because it seems like, again, it's another top-down structure, like, No Child Left Behind. It sort of reminds me of that. And I was wondering, do local school districts, local counties have a chance to really have an input into Common Core? And can individual areas tailor Common Core to the needs of their citizens or residents?
So the thinking behind it, as I sort of alluded to earlier, was lessening the variance between states in our country when it comes to the standards that are being taught to our children and on which our children are being assessed. the way the curriculum works in Maryland before Common Core, and I'm sure after Common Core, unless something more drastic than I can see on the horizon happens, the state always sets the standards, right? We report as locals to a state education agency. We can exceed the standards that the state establishes for us in most areas, not all, but most, but we cannot go below those standards. So there's both a yes and a no to your question. We must adhere to the standards that the state has established as part of the Common Core, the consortia that Maryland's a part of, but we can tailor and adjust where we can with different parts of programming. I am not a curriculum instruction, like guru, but I can say that there's plenty of opportunity within the curriculum to do creative curricular things in our program. French immersion, again, is an example of that.
Are you saying then that Common Core, for example, establishes a benchmark? The benchmark is the lowest level at which students are taught in terms of academic attainment, but there are ways to enhance that benchmark?
Well, I'm not sure that I'd like to say lowest because it's a higher bar than we've had before, but it is the bar to which we must at least meet that standard, and yes, we can exceed that standard.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Welcome to Bowie.
Glad to see you again. Last time we were together was at Kenilworth Elementary School, dedicating an outdoor garden for environmental work.
Indeed. Well, before I ask you my question, we've been joined by Senator Peters. Where did you end up?
Doug?
And Delegate Geraldine Valentina Smith.
Right.
Covering all my bases. So, my question to you is, and I know this is hitting you heavy when you first start, but we've been asking for the new high school forever, and it doesn't seem like we'll get it. It doesn't seem like it's in the books. Maybe we don't have the numbers for whatever reason. It doesn't seem like it's gonna get there. So, how about a facelift for Bowie High School? I mean, everything that you're told needs a facelift. So we could start to attract more businesses and more things. We have that beautiful auditorium attached to a dilapidated building. So let's kind of like fix it up and have a nice place for the students and the teachers to visit every day.
So I'm certainly not opposed to that. On the other hand, let me just say that there are several major pieces of the capital side of the school system's budget, and it's true in all districts. So we have our long-term facilities plan, we have our maintenance plan, and we have our capital improvement plan. Those three things have to work together, and I think, whether we have or haven't done that as well as we should in the past, we're going to do everything within our power to make sure those three pieces of our work well together and complement one another. There are some rules to that work, which the state guides. Even though it doesn't give the majority of the money, it still holds the rules. And the state appropriations, sort of guide that conversation. So, and it varies from district to district on what what portion of that the state pays and what portion of that the local pays. The state, however, in trying to be good stewards of funds, both local and state funds, has some requirements like you have to be able to show that you have a capacity issue in certain cases for school construction, for new schools, for second high schools as opposed to a replacement high school for Bowie High, because I think I heard another as opposed to a new.
I heard a facelift as opposed
Yeah,
to.
okay. So when it comes to the numbers game, the first part of the question, a new high school, the numbers are very, very important. And we can't show capacity within a certain range that the state would require at this juncture. So unless that changes, that won't happen. In terms of the facelift, there are 200 and some schools, and we are working to prioritize. There's already a list. We're going to be reevaluating that over the course of the year. There is an audit and an evaluation of our facilities and things that's going to be going on that the new legislation, I believe, actually calls for. So where Bowie High School falls in relationships to the other districts, our responsibility is to try to be fair as we work through that process. And we will be taking a look at all the facilities in the district. I just can't promise you whether you'll be in the next year's facelift group or whether you'll be, a few years down the road.
Just keep your eye on it.
I will.
Thank you.
I will. We are also seeing some interest in the Baltimore City, I'll call it the Baltimore City Plan, that tried to leverage getting a bunch of their stuff done up front with an agreement from the county and the state that they would fund at the same level over like the next 10 years or so. So we are having some conversations about, the Baltimore work.
Good evening, Dr. Matt.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Donna Fowler, and I have 5 boys, all of which have gone to Prince George's County Schools.
Great.
I've been in Bowie, my family's been here for over 100 years.
Wow.
Long before Levitt ever
Yeah.
existed here in Bowie. I have 2 questions for you. The first one is I sit on the Governor's Early Childhood Advisory Council at the Maryland State Department of Education. And under the Race to the Top, each county, under one of the projects was to develop an early childhood advisory council at the county level. So I'm a firm believer in early care and education. If we ever want to make the gains in the K-12 system, we have to really focus on 0 to 5. What are your thoughts on early care and education, and how do you plan on partnering as a school system with that advisory council?
So I agree with you. That work is very important. There's no question that when Maryland went to all-day kindergarten across the state, although it met with some pocketed resistance across the state when it first came in, it certainly has had a very, very, profound result on child outcomes. I would love it if the state would go to all-day pre-kindergarten across the state. That comes with a funding, both an operational cost and a facilities cost. We found that out with the kindergarten expansion because there was a 3-year rollout and there was no, like physical plant conversation about what all those kindergarten, classrooms were gonna, what we were gonna do with, where we were gonna put the kids, I guess. So we put portable classrooms, trailers, whatever, learning cottages, whatever you wanna call them, from district to district, at schools all across the state, and are just now, years later, kind of retiring some of those as we do additions to schools to make up for that. The county put 8 additional all-day pre-kindergarten programs in the school system for this year, and we're going to, expand that regularly. And again, it would help if the state would, kind of step into that and help us with some funding for it. As far as the advisory council, I actually just saw something in the last couple of weeks, but I have not met with them. But I, certainly will be trying to do that in the near future, and talking, about what that curriculum looks like and how it collaborates with Head Start and the other possibilities and programs that we have.
And I just want to caution you about opening up pre-Ks in every classroom without doing some contracting, or it will destroy the early care and education
Yeah.
here in this community.
Yeah, I know the state's been, having that kind of conversation as well.
So my second question is my second child is a child with disability. He has dyslexia and dysgraphia, and he attended Prince George's County Schools until 8th grade. And in the 8th grade, he decided that he did not want to go to school anymore because he felt unworthy of an education. I ended up seeking out a private school for him on the Eastern Shore, so we have to drive him. He goes an hour every day to school, to a strength-based program. When he entered into that 9th grade program on the Eastern Shore, he was only reading at a 3rd grade level. Today he's in 12th grade and reading at an 11th grade level, but it was because it was strength-based. So I would prefer not to, with another child who has a disability, to have to pay $28,000 a year again. For high school, what is the system doing to ensure that we are approaching education in a variety of ways in a strength-based method for children with disabilities?
Yeah, so, the law is very clear, when we have children in our, in our schools, in our communities, we have to provide a free and appropriate public education for them. There's a process that you go through to, work through the assessment piece, and then the IEP team meeting, the individual education plan meeting that includes parents, sometimes advocates, school system folks, to talk about what that is. Occasionally, there's disagreements. There's a process in place for that. Appropriate level of education can't be provided for by the district, then the district should be paying for that, non-public placement or whatever the right placement is. If on the other hand, it's not determined that that's the case, then the responsibility, if parents pursue those, that falls to them in the process. And I don't know the circumstances of your case and wouldn't want to discuss that publicly anyway. But in general, I would say to you, I believe that kids need to have the appropriate settings. And I did a summer school principalship at Reed right up the street. I have, worked with special education students throughout my career. Certainly as a principal, you are very engaged in that process in your buildings. I had a GTLD program, when I was principal at Walter Johnson in Montgomery County, and I'm, familiar, with some other, areas of special education as well, and just believe that we need to be, making sure that we're providing what our children need.
Okay, well, I'd like to continue a conversation with you, because I don't think always appropriate is always the best of what we're giving our kids.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Hi, Dr. Maxwell.
How are you?
I'm great.
Good.
Good to see you again. You've seen me so many times now in the
I
past
have.
2 weeks.
I have.
So I'm not going to go through the same rhetoric about the Spanish immersion, but thank you very much for listening and offering suggestions about even thinking about having it to the next school year. But what I want to have a better understanding of, when you just spoke about the Common Core, what you stated, and I had to write it down to make sure I was correct, is that you want to make sure that the children are more competitive internationally. So help me just really understand how, in working with that Common Core, and bringing in those specialty programs to do that.
So the Common Core was written with the international assessments in mind, the ones that show the United States' position on science and math testing falling relative to other countries. It's more that other people are passing us than we're falling, like a rock or anything. But just implementing the Common Core has been designed to raise the standards to which we're teaching our children and what they'll be assessed to. In terms of the specialty programs, the Common Core will be a part of those in the appropriate areas, reading and math and English and writing. There's a whole, bunch of changes that are coming in that area. But in places, like language instruction, for example, the Common Core is really mostly related to the language arts and the math arena, not to necessarily a Spanish immersion program or a Montessori program. It's a different, kind of assessment. The specialty programs would be designed to meet the desires, expectation, demand of parents in our community.
Okay, thank you. And I just have one more other question. As my child is not yet grade school age, he's still preschool. And as I'm working, I appreciate what you're doing in trying to create a better relationship. So I just want to know what other things you have in mind to do for the preschool parents who are trying to figure out, is PG County Public Schools the right place for us? And will it be within the next 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, so initially, part of this is going to look at a funding cycle. We have to sit down with our partners at the county in particular and with the state as well and talk about what those resources look like. Before I can tell you that I've got a 5-year plan on, preschool and where it would be across the county, I've got to know what is realistic in terms of the funding, pipeline for those programs. So we're having some very good conversations with county government. And I'm having some very good conversations with our state leadership as well. I had dinner with all the delegates from Prince George's County a couple weeks ago. I've had dinner with all the senators from the county. I've had some individual meetings with others of them. And, we're working to kind of craft that direction forward. I just can't stand here right now and commit to you, like I said about Spanish immersion. I can't tell you whether ultimately it's going to be this number of schools and how many years, at what pace it's going to take to get there. We're still sort of in that, design and discussion
Well, for
phase.
me, not really preschool, because in 2 years, he'll be ready for kindergarten.
Yeah.
So in 2 years, I need the school system to be ready to offer.
We're going to be ready. We're going to be ready for you.
Okay, 2 years, yeah, 2 years, thank you.
You bet.
Good evening.
Hi.
My name is Joanne Robinson. I'm the parent of 3 children that live in Prince George's County, 2 who are in a charter school in Prince George's County. And a lot of the other parents have asked my questions just to expand a little bit on the first gentleman's question, what would you define in your short time as the CEO of the schools as the single biggest weakness that you've observed, and how do you plan to address it?
So I go right back to the academic achievement is probably the strongest need that we have in this district. Part of that is from the inconsistency from school to school and classroom to classroom. And so that comes from, a professional development plan. It comes from properly evaluating people, both in the leadership role and in classroom teachers and the people doing the professional development. So focusing on, the quality of the folks who are in our classrooms and in our schools and how to improve that is, probably going to be job one going forward.
The second part of my question, so in addition to being a parent, I am a business owner in Prince George's County. My parents, one of my parents just asked a question about foreign language immersion. That is a passion of mine. I started the organization fulfilling needs here in the county. And as you were talking a little bit about Common Core and how Common Core is designed to make our students globally competitive, I'm very interested in the International Baccalaureate program as well, the IB program, because my children came from private school where they were intermediate at the middle school and high school level. But I'd much rather, like the other parent, prefer to be able to receive, give my children that opportunity to receive that education in the public school system. So can you discuss a little bit more? I saw a news article where it was being considered, implementation was being considered at the elementary level. Do you have anything you can share on that?
Sure, it's my desire to have the full continuum of international baccalaureate in the county. Right now, we have a number of high school programs. We only have one middle school program that feeds one of those high school programs, so you have no pipeline, you have no introduction of parents to the programming at the earlier ages. So it is my hope that we will have not only the high school programs we have, but we'll have a middle school feed to each of those programs, and that we'll have primary years elementary school programs that will also support that framework.
Hi, Dr. Maxwell.
Hi.
My name is Jessica Scoop. I'm a parent of a child at Penworth Elementary.
Great.
I work in higher education assessment. I guess I have a question that doesn't really revolve around Common Core, because I see that, as you're saying, as the way for this county, and it's the program that the state has adopted to sort of help with the academic and educational attainment. I guess my question for the county level would be then, if you have a bar that you're setting for educational attainment and academic achievement, in this county, do you see us trying to meet those goals with vastly different physical resources? And how do you plan, as the CEO, as the superintendent, to sort of enhance the resources available at the county? Because it's great that we have a curriculum that's setting the bar, but not everybody's doing that with the same resources financially and with the same teachers and with the same paraprofessionals and support that they probably do need. My other question is sort of contingent to that. I hear a lot about the assessment levels of, or the means of assessment for the Common Core and the curriculum. How are the teachers being assessed? And if they're doing a good job, what is the plan to retain them? And what is the plan to attract and recruit more talent in teachers? I mean, Common Core answers the question about what do we teach. It doesn't answer the question of how are we teaching it and who is teaching it. And that's where I see the county being more of it, having it's more ownership. And I'm kind of curious what you're planning to do with that.
Yeah, so don't go away, because that was a really multifaceted, boy, I feel like I'm back in graduate school. So the different, I guess, resources that different schools have, which I sort of think, after being at Kenilworth and talking to some of the parents there, includes the physical, plan, which I've talked a little bit about already. And there's no question that there's a large variance, in what buildings have to offer. I've been in schools that, like I said, are brand new. I was at the brand new Oxon Hill High School on the first day of school. I've been to the ribbon cutting last week at Avalon Elementary School. I'm going to Doswell Brooks in a few days for the renovated school. And that's not the only place they are. I mean, there are other places in the county as well. But again, you've got hundreds of buildings, and you've got a budget that's not, robust enough that it's going to, renovate or modernize those schools every 10 years. It's a much longer process. Most buildings like this with cinder blocks are built on a 50-year or more life cycle, and you replace systemic pieces, HVA systems or roofs at a more regular or a more frequent basis to, extend the life expectancy of buildings. That said, I've been in buildings where the controls in the school don't seem to be talking to the controls on the air quality, the HVAC systems to the remote locations or whatever in a way that makes it very comfortable for learning and teaching to go on. I've certainly seen facilities, that are, the throwbacks to the open space classrooms that create all kinds of other, dynamics in schools. So focusing on that and again, trying to find a plan to move forward as rapidly as possible to upgrade as many schools as possible in whatever period of time we can get that done in is certainly, something that we're already talking about, already meeting with the state about. But we just don't have an answer yet in 10 weeks. In terms of, the assessment of kids, and we know what's coming, that's the park assessments. In terms of teachers, the part of the Race to the Top and the ESEA, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act waiver, had us required, all districts required in Maryland, to develop a new teacher-principal evaluation process that takes student accountability, student assessment, results into it, takes the work of Charlotte Danielson in the skills side of the teaching process that you're talking about. And we're in the process of, the system has been agreed to by the bargaining units, the ASASP, and Teachers Association, PGCEA. And we're in the process, we just hired somebody to sort of facilitate the implementation of that work. The evaluation system for principals and teachers was approved in June, I believe, here in Prince George's County this past year. And so we're in the process right now of working on a new form, a new format, and those kind of things. And so we've hired somebody again to do that. Teachers have been going to conferences and other things about, Charlotte Danielson and her work and those evaluation systems. But now we just have that big push of getting it implemented and getting it there. And of course, the teacher training piece and the support for that is really, really important. And quite honestly, we don't have the size professional development budget that one might hope you'd have in a district this large as part of the budget cuts that took place here and the thousands and thousands of public school system employees, that the positions that were reduced in this district. Some of those were in professional development and teacher mentor positions, and that certainly is not helping the process. But again, how many of those things can you do? And, while the budget's improving a little bit, the economy's improving a little bit, it's not enough to replace 3,000 employees and, redo bunches of schools. So, we'll continue that lift. And we'll continue to work with our partners in the Teachers Association and with the Administrators Union. So, you're welcome.
Hello, Dr. Maxwell. It's good to see you.
Hello.
I was at your first meet and greet,
Yes,
first
ma'am.
public one at least, and the budget hearing last week.
Yes.
To advocate for Spanish immersion. I have 2 preschool-age children. I like Spanish immersion to be among specialty programs, so from my perspective, we need to be ready in 1 year.
Oh, I got 2 years before, now I'm down to 1.
That's right. And so thank you for, in recent days, really publicly expressing your interest, your support, your willingness to figure this out, that which has not been figured out. So thank you for your willingness to take that on, and I'm very optimistic and hopeful that you will be successful with others to make that happen. So my 2 questions are related to that. Your support for specialty programs, including Spanish immersion, as well as the International Baccalaureate for primary years. Do you see a role for charter schools in helping us, have those types of programs? That's one question. And also, do you see a role for new partnerships with businesses, be they local, multinational, casinos, as well as embassies or other organizations to help provide programmatic support or financial assistance for some of these programs, Spanish immersion as well as others?
Absolutely. Boy, all these questions are starting to have trouble following them all. But if I stumble, you can correct me where I took off wrong on the question. But in terms of do charters have a role? They certainly can have a role. They should not be, kind of the only way we can go and get Spanish immersion, but certainly there are models. I visited the international school in Baltimore City just last year that is being run by one of Prince George's County's former principals, John and Kiri. It's a K-8, will be when it's fully enrolled, program that runs on an international baccalaureate primary years framework, and it has 4 immersion language strands, which I think are Spanish, Russian, Chinese, and French. Yeah, it's a great program. John and I have known each other for a long time since I was, here in my first role. And, that's a charter school, but there's no reason why a public school can't organize itself in those ways too. And I think that's one of the challenges that public education generally, not just in Prince George's County, generally has had is, its slowness to adapt to a changing environment. And so we have to continue to talk about, how we're going to look going forward, not just how we've looked in the past. And, so we'll continue to have those kind of conversations. In terms of partnerships, there's lots of opportunities to partner in the work I've done in Chinese immersion in my last job, the Confucius Society over at the University of Maryland. I have a partnership with the Italian embassy and a couple of the governments in what would be state governments, I guess, in Italy. We signed an agreement with them in my last district doing some work, particularly through the arts. We use Italian as the language of choice for our arts program in the southern part of Anne Arundel County and French in the northern part of the county as a piece of what we require in the arts magnet program. So certainly working with embassies is a possibility. Societies like the Confucius Society is certainly fine. Businesses, companies, opportunities to send kids abroad to study. All of those are, great opportunities, and we're willing to engage in whatever partners are willing to engage with us. Bet. Sure. You thought you'd talk me out. I'm really sorry I brought you all out here to answer questions, but just in case, sometimes you need a backup. By the way, Dr. Green, who is one of my newest executive team members, we worked together when I was in yet another place, and she's fabulous and is a Bowie resident, and I'm glad to have her working on this side of the county line with me. So it's nice to have that opportunity. I've heard a lot about Montgomery taking a lot of our people, but let it be known that we can too take people from them. So I would just say that I said this at I think all of my meet and greets, but at least a couple of my meet and greets. This kind of engagement is really, really important, and I hope that it will. I hope that it is and is going to continue to take place within individual schools, within school communities, just like this Bowie Forum. I hope it takes place all across the county, and I hope this isn't the last time that we have this opportunity. I hope it's not the last time that the school district sees some of the people in the room. The one time, coming in and here's what I have to say, and then it takes everybody working together to really make us the greatest district that we can be. And I'm thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled to be engaged in this work. I'm thrilled to have you as allies and pushers and pullers and and those Spanish immersion people, they come everywhere. So in fact, they didn't warn me so much as let me know they would be here this week after they were at the last one, which was fun. I told them that was great. It'd be great to see them. So I look forward to the work, and I guess that's sort of the closing remark I have. I appreciate your coming out and taking the time. I know that it's because, as the mayor said, the 3 most important things in Bowie and in Prince George's County are education, education, and education. Thanks.